We are learning more tonight about the investigation into a former Midstate principal who was suspended, then resigned after questions surfaced about his conduct during TCAP testing this April.
WSMV4 investigative reporter Stacey Cameron obtained a copy of the school district's investigation into that incident. And Stacey's statements from two teachers contain troubling allegations against that former principal.
This is the 119-page investigation that Murray County Schools conducted into Dr. Michael Ford. It calls what happened at Howell Elementary a security breach, and the findings have been turned over to the State Department of Education. According to the investigation, Ford pulled 35 fourth graders, students with the highest rate of disciplinary concerns, into a separate classroom where he oversaw their tests. Ford told the district his school lost a fourth grade teacher, so he wanted to keep the worst behaved students from disturbing others. But according to the report, the change was made after the school's testing setup was submitted to the district. Questions about Ford then surfaced when two teachers told district leaders that students in Ford's classroom were saying he told them to answer questions in their test books instead of using answer bubble sheets. At least 3 students claimed that some answers on their math test were changed. A couple more said answer sheets were filled in on a test they didn't complete. When questioned by the district, Ford allegedly admitted to transcribing student answers, saying, quote, "I screwed up." I did reach out to Ford, Murray County Schools, and the Department of Education. The school district declined my interview request. In an email, the DOE said the department does not comment on potential or ongoing investigations. Now, by text message, Ford said that on legal advice, he can't speak about the allegations yet, but he did say that, quote, "Groups were formed to ensure students had the best testing environment possible for success, and district leadership was informed of those groupings and their rationale in advance," end quote. When we get back the DOE's investigative report sometime later this month, we'll let you know what it says. For now, I'm WSMV4 investigative reporter Stacey Cameron.